Thank you, Truong, and good morning, everybody. The purpose of my presentation this morning is to position Vietnam against its regional competitors. Quite often, and the data you've seen, is all about looking inward, comparing each asset class's performance within Vietnam. So if we have fund managers recently reported in the media saying that funds will be moving offshore and out of Vietnam, and we have multinational companies choosing to locate in Thailand or in Indonesia or Malaysia rather than Vietnam, we need to understand why this is and what our competitive offer is in Vietnam. So first of all, to position this, this slide is the world's billionaires. And this is a fantastic aspirational slide because we all want to be a billionaire. But what we can see very, very clearly is there's a very large amount of wealth. Over the last 10 years, billionaires in Asia have multiplied by 5 times. The market share of billionaires is increasing enormously. Wealth is moving from the traditional west to east. Asia is becoming wealthier, has a greater market share. Moving through into some indicators around the region, GDP. We're all aware that Vietnam has a relatively low GDP in comparison to our neighbours. That's understood. But if we move to the next slide, what we see is the compound annual growth rate of GDP forecast through to 2015. This shows Vietnam is third highest, third only to India and China. This is a really good indicator for Vietnam's future growth. What is also a fantastic indicator is the level of private consumption as a percentage of GDP. This means we are strongly consuming in Vietnam at the moment. So both of these pieces of data bode very, very well for particularly the retail environment. Moving through to some other indicators, the Gini coefficient, this is an indicator of the dispersion of income amongst the population. So if you have a high Gini coefficient, such as Hong Kong, Singapore, Philippines, it means you have a great spread of wealthy to poor. Vietnam sits somewhere here in the middle, and we've had a relatively static score for quite some time. And that means that our income is relatively close together. So this is good for the general economy. As we move further, we will have a greater spread and our Gini coefficient will become larger. This slide I always put up, it's quite static. Many commentators put up the demographic pyramid, and they say that Vietnam has a wonderful young population. It's true, we do have a wonderful young population, but competitively against our neighbours, how do we fare? The demographic window shows the number of people at working age within a population, and this is very important for the overall economy's health. So what we see is, look, sure, Vietnam has a very good demographic window, that's fine, but our neighbours around the region often have far better demographic windows. So yeah, it's good, but some of our neighbours are better. So it's just a word of caution there. This is the best slide of all of my slides. This is urbanisation rate and urban populations. Vietnam is the standout performer in the region. So the urbanisation rate is the number of people moving towards the cities, and Vietnam has by far and away the highest urbanisation rate. We also have the lowest urban population. What this means is it's fantastic for Vietnam's future residential opportunities. We have a strong amount of migration from non-urban areas into the cities. And we can see this with Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh growing 2 or 3% a year. That equates to 200,000 or 300,000 people moving to the cities. Average occupancy, household occupancies of 4 or a little bit higher at the moment. That's 50,000 plus new dwellings per annum. So keep on building. So that's a very, very good slide. Just to pause, some reasons for caution. Some of these reasons, oil. Oil, as far as volatility goes, is the new gold. All of these oil shocks could transform the global economy. Look, we know that the global economic slowdown, if it's not another European country suffering under sovereign debt, I think Spain was the topic this morning, that's going to continue on for quite some time. Inflation, sure. Public sector is interesting. The Prime Minister 2 days ago in Cambodia very definitely endorsed further reforms of the public sector. and he made some very, very firm comments around that continuing restructuring. Property risks, look, we're continuing with bank financing. That is easing, and we're all very, I suppose everybody in this room is very happy about the recent easing in interest rates. Overdevelopment, there is some supply side issues, there is absolutely no doubt about that. And there's a few other investment channels with the de-dollarisation and removal of speculation. Other risks, very immature markets outside of the main cities, and these markets will grow and develop, but they're very immature at the moment. And the last one there is our highly competitive peers. We have seen that recently, particularly in the manufacturing sector, where major manufacturing contracts have moved to Malaysia, Thailand or Indonesia. However, reasons for optimism. We have strong urbanisation, we have great income growth and move to middle income, we have low leverage and a high equity percentage in most of our developments. We are climbing the value chain and we are internationalising. There is a strong growing domestic demand, and there are overseas, particularly Japanese manufacturers, now moving to Vietnam in order to manufacture for the local environment. The optimism continues. Government growth targets and the economic restructuring is underlined recently by the Prime Minister. So now let's just move around the region and see how we score on some other things. Growing domestic demand. We see, again, Vietnam, only second to China on domestic demand. Very, very strong driver, particularly for the retail environment. Retail density. We are under-shopped. Vietnam has very, very few shops relative to our neighbours. KL, Bangkok, 0.6, 0.8. Both Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, somewhere around 0.1. So we have a long way to go in the evolution of retailing in Vietnam. Prime retail benchmark. This measures high street shopping, the affordability of shopping in Vietnam against our neighbours. What we see is that we are at the lower end. We are quite affordable compared to everywhere else in the region. This is good for retailing. Their gross occupancy cost in terms of their sales is relatively low. If we have a look at some of the other asset classes, office properties, again, we are down towards the lower end of our peer comparison. Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh both scoring very favourably and very affordably against our peers. Similarly, retail mall properties, very few retail malls in Vietnam, but again, Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, very affordable relative to our peers. So this is underlying a good, strong future for the retail. Service departments as a proxy for FDI and certainly for hotels' performance. Service departments are a little bit more expensive, but still at the bottom end of affordability. This is all boding very well for good, strong growth in the future. A.T. Kearney FDI Confidence Index, this was just released in February. This is a survey of fund managers in foreign direct investment globally. What we see is that many of our peers are in the top echelons, in the top hierarchy, and they are growing very, very strongly. Vietnam's up there, have no doubt. We are there as a foreign direct investment favoured location. However, some issues that we need to be a little bit aware of. Indonesia and Malaysia have both moved very, very strongly, 20th to 9th, 21st to 10th. That's on the back of some very robust, large investments. Unfortunately, Vietnam has dropped a couple of points over there over the period survey. So we're still in the top echelons and we're still in the forefront of foreign direct investment fund managers' minds, but we need to be aware of what we're up against. Low-cost carriers. This is a very interesting driver for the property market. Do Hung has highlighted that in her slide on the hospitality industry. Our view is that low-cost carriers have enormous propensity as a driver to change, particularly some of the second-class, second-tier cities. We are entirely under the benchmark for the region. This is a lot of growth to occur in the region. Domestic penetration, very, very low domestic penetration. So there's a lot to come out of the low-cost carriers, and this will be something to watch as a future property driver. Last slide. This is about the maturity of the real estate market in general in Vietnam against our neighbours. This slide represents the amount of institutional grade property available in the country. So if I'm a foreign fund manager and I want to buy institutional grade property, which is generally robust, high capital value, safe, easily tradable, passive income, that sort of thing, then where do I look and how much choice have I got? The last 2011 slide indicated around 17 billion available in Vietnam. It's at 21 billion this year. So it is a very relatively low score, but what we do see is that there is increasing amounts of property coming into this class, this asset nature, and also increasing liquidity. What this slide is just a snapshot of the transactions 2011-12, and there's some of these are, the details are not entirely correct. If I had to put that slide up 2 years ago, there would have been 3 transactions there. At this stage, we've got, I think there's about 13 transactions. So it's showing the increased liquidity in the property sector, and this is a good, very, very good sign. So that concludes my presentation. There is pieces of paper in your packages for questions and answers. If you'd like to write your questions down, then we have a very, very strong panel of experts here that are willing to consider and answer your questions. So if you can just write your questions down, Trung can go around and collect some. He's already got way ahead. And I'll hand it over to Trung for the question and answer session. Thank you very much.